Hi, everybody, and welcome to our complimentary webinar, which is brought to you today in partnership with Unifour. It's called Choosing the Right Conversational AI Solution for Your Contact Centre. There's a lot of noise out there in the environment at the moment, and I know that a lot of people are really challenged by some of that information, almost too much information. So today's all about giving you the opportunity to hear from the experts, really understand what are those options and how can you actually tailor and build the right business case for your situation and for your organisation. In the spirit of reconciliation, Auscontact acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respect to their elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people here today. Today's webinar will run for approximately 60 minutes, and during that time, with the help of today's special guests, Adam and Vijay, we hope to spark your interest and engage you in the conversation, as well as provide some ideas for you to take back to your respective organisations. To round off the session, we will have a Q&A at the end of the webinar, where you can ask any of those questions or provide feedback and commentary. So I'm Fran Southwood, CEO of Auscontact, and I will be your moderator for today. While we're just waiting for people to join, we'll just quickly run through some of the housekeeping with you. Remember to interact with us today to maximise the benefit. And as you know, you don't need to take too many notes, as we'll provide a recording of the webinar at the end of the session. To interact with us, please use the Q&A button on the control panel. You can ask questions, you can make comments for Adam, Vijay or myself from time to time. If the questions you're asking are quite specific to the content being discussed, we might stop and get those questions dealt with in real time. But for some of them, there might be ones that we'll keep till the end and actually include in our Q&A session. If you're anything like me, I always think of a great question, but if I don't write it down, I will forget it. So even if you type them down as we go along, that way you won't forget to ask them, and we'll make sure that we include those in the Q&A session at the end. If you're listening through headphones or speakers and you experience any issues, note on the control panel there's a raise hand button, and if you click that, someone from Auscontact will jump in and give you a hand. Or alternatively, your original registration confirmation email would have had all of the relevant phone numbers and access codes, so you can just jump back to that and actually utilise those to join back in with the group. All that out of the way, I'd now like to introduce our speakers for today. We're really lucky to be joined by Adam Spence, who's the Vice President ANZ at Unifour, and Vijay Shankar, who is the Vice President Product Marketing at Unifour. And I'm going to hand over to you. It's a really exciting topic that people are super keen and interested to hear more about. Over to you.
Yeah, cool. Thank you, Fran. So I think I'm going to sort of kick off the proceedings and introduce Unifour before I hand over to Vijay and then circle back for a case study, which is a local Australian case study. So just quickly in terms of who are Unifour. So Unifour was founded in 2008 in Chennai in India. And we were originally created as a services business focusing in on conversational AI and speech recognition technologies covering the Indian language set. And for those of you on today's session will understand that if you can cover such a diverse language set as that existing in India, you can pretty much cover any part of this planet. So as part of a series of funding rounds and growth of us as an organization, the most recent being February of last year, where we did our Series E funding round of a $400 million US investment. And the only reason I highlight that for the people on today's call is that is the largest investment in a conversational AI platform in the contact center to date. And that's allowed us to do two things. One is obviously invest in great people and great technology in our own product, but also go through a series of acquisitions. So on the top right-hand side of this slide, we've acquired some diverse businesses like Jakarta, which was an Israeli-based business, a leader in low-code, no-code environment for agent scripting. Emotion Labs out of Spain, which has bolstered our sentiment and tonal detection. In terms of our business now, we're close to 1,000 employees around the world. In terms of referenceable customers, we have deployments across all major verticals, so financial services, telco, and otherwise. In terms of one of our most successful go-to-markets, we partner quite heavily with the BPO providers. I don't know whether there's any BPO providers on the call, but partner with a series of BPO providers to take our technology to market. Locally, we've partnered with Probe, for those of you that know Probe here locally. In terms of what Vijay is going to talk about when he covers off his section of today's webinar, what you will see today is we are a conversational automation platform. So really combining AI technology, RPA, and computer vision into a single platform. So in terms of sort of focusing on what does all this mean locally, for those of you who have seen the 2023 Smart Recruitment Benchmarking Study, and if you haven't, I would strongly encourage you to go and search it out and find it. You can find it online from the Smart Recruitment website. Around 300 businesses, contact centers contributed to that report. The only thing I really wanted to highlight is that, a lot of people, when they think of, conversational AI in the contact center, really think about, is this a chatbot or a virtual assistant? And if you were to look back maybe, 3 or 4 years or even 12 months ago, that's really what people thought conversational AI was all about, taking potentially routine or somewhat complicated calls and interactions and automating them. And really, I'd like to, encourage people to think, no, it's not actually all about, self-service and automation, but, how you can use the technology. And I know that, Vijay will talk about it through his section. Is really one of the responses from the benchmarking was, 85% of people now recognize that conversational AI will augment and assist those people on a call. The calls that exist and the interactions that exist today are the most complicated and complex that exist. Gone are the routine transactions. So how can you use conversational AI and automation to assist those interactions? And really, 85% of people are basically saying, yes, AI has and can deliver an overall better contact center experience. So I just wanted to sort of set the scene in terms of Unifour and the area of focus that we're focusing on from an Australian perspective. And I think I'm going to hand over now to Vijay.
Thanks, Adam, and thanks everybody for your time in attending the session. What I'm going to cover basically in my short section is going to be two very clear things. Number one is, when you're all evaluating a conversational AI platform or a solution, what are the critical components you have to look for in a conversational AI platform? Adam actually can build the slide. And that's exactly what I'm going to be covering. So before we get into conversational AI platform, I want to take a step back, and maybe it's not covered in this slide, but I want to just level set with the whole aspect around generative AI today, which is the hot button topic right now. And how does that differ from conversational AI? And the whole aspect around large language models. How does a large language model, does it fit into conversational AI or generative AI? So in general, I think the easiest way to think about it is that conversational AI can actually include components of generative AI, but it doesn't work the other way. So what does it mean? So the first thing is, it's important to define what conversational AI is. And what conversational AI is basically understanding of technologies, your automatic speech recognition, your speech to text, text to speech, how humans speak, understanding what is happening in a typical conversation, and then providing the next best responses, either in self-service or agent-assisted service. So it's more about trying to help you finish a task. So let's take an example. It could be as simple as, I want to make a payment on my house today. So if you're interacting with a chatbot, it's able to recognize that this basically means it's a payment journey. And then conversational AI says, okay, here is a way you can actually make a payment, and here is a link for it. So it's about the next action, which is pretty much what conversational AI is about. Generative AI, on the other hand, is taking it to the next level. It's using large language models to develop new content. So looking at new content, new responses, new kind of capabilities. So which kind of really takes a self-service to the next level. So a simple example could be, some company is connected to a knowledge management system. Conversational AI can give you a very specific, okay, somebody asks for X, give them the Y answer. Somebody asks for Z, give them the A answer, and so forth. But over the course of time, human beings are human beings. We're going to ask questions in a different way. We might have newer questions. When newer questions are being asked and the answers are being provided, there should be a way where this is automatically fed into a system where it can give the next response. So generative AI is, think about it as it is going to be generating new content based on the learnings of what conversational AI systems do. So in terms of so that's kind of just to level set. So if there is one thing which you want to take away from this presentation, definitely taking the understanding of how conversational AI is different than generative AI. So now, in terms of evaluating a conversational AI platform, what's really critical? Obviously, there is a need to have world-class accuracies as far as your automatic speech recognition is concerned, as well as your speech to text is concerned. So that's kind of a given, because that's really understanding what a customer is saying or your customer is saying to give the responses what's required. The number one critical thing what's involved is integrations. How does this conversational AI platform integrate with my existing contact center infrastructure, such as the CCAS providers or the CTI providers? How does it integrate with the different systems in my technology stack? Is it easy to integrate to get the information what I need? Is it easy to kind of get the information from a knowledge management system so I can provide responses? So it's extremely critical, and that's the number one thing. Integrations are extremely critical. No solution can work on its own. As you build this out, next thing is factually correct. So is the information what's being provided, is it able to understand in the right way and also provide the right responses? So I talked about automatic speech recognition. A good conversational AI platform will require high accuracies of your automatic speech recognition or your speech to text. Why is that? Because sometimes no two people will say the same thing in the same way. So somebody can say make a payment, somebody can say bill pay. Those are two distinct ways of communicating how to make a bill payment. So your conversational AI should really be in a position to understand what each instance is saying and be factually correct so that you can provide the next best response. The third slide goes into enterprise specific. This is fantastic because I would like to bring into the whole example around ChatGPT. What's the buzzword today? The problem with open AI models, the problem with open frameworks is that it's very generic. I can give you a very specific example. What works for ANZ Bank in Australia may not work for the Commonwealth Bank in Australia in terms of the responses, in terms of the customer complaints, in terms of the customer inquiries. What works for a bank in Australia could be different than what works for Qantas in Australia, which is an airline. The journeys are different. The customer interactions are different. The questions are different. So it's important for your conversational AI to truly understand what's truly happening in your enterprise, in your industry. So thereby you're able to provide the factually correct answers and also are able to integrate with the different systems within your enterprise, within your industry. So it's important that the third key critical criteria is about how do we have an enterprise-specific model within your conversational AI platform so you can provide the right responses. And the last part of the slide is basically about security and data sovereignty. Now, as it requires access to different systems, requires access to different types of data, it becomes extremely important to have the data sovereignty required, the data privacy required. Enterprises want to control their data. That's a given. So how can you make sure that you're able to tap into the data to give you the enterprise-specific knowledge, which can make your conversational AI systems factually correct, but at the same time provide the enterprises the ability to make sure that they have all the controls required in the data. They have all the privacy controls, they have all the security controls, so thereby it is secure and is also completely sovereign with the enterprise. Next slide, please. So when we think about all of this, how do you choose the right model for conversational AI? So it's important to understand all the different types of technologies, and I'll get to this very soon. Obviously, the first one is about conversational AI. It's just about understanding and processing human language. We talked about it. Emotion AI is another important thing, which is very important. So what this means is that now human beings are interacting in different ways. So you need to have a conversational AI system needs to have the ability to really understand the true emotion and tone of the customer. So somebody is speaking, are they saying in a really irritable tone? Or somebody is writing, if somebody writes into a chatbot with all caps, that the customer is frustrated. How do you recognize the true tone and sentiment of the conversation? So thereby you're able to provide the best treatment in the fastest manner possible. That's an important component of conversational AI as part of the emotion AI. Knowledge AI is a system which is really talking about ingesting structured and unstructured data into your knowledge management systems, thereby to keep your knowledge management systems accurate and most relevant for the customer. So that's an important aspect to think about, is really looking at the knowledge AI. And lastly, about generative AI is about how do you try to drive new content by using the input and data trained on. So these are some interesting aspects which companies have to think about today, especially when they're evaluating a conversational AI system. Gone are the days of just using it for pure ASR and TTS or STT. It's about how can I incorporate or how can I complement this with emotion AI so I can truly understand the emotion of the customer. How can I complement this with knowledge AI so they can dynamically update my knowledge management systems? And lastly, will my conversational AI platform have access to have the ability to drive new content with generative AI? How does it drive the new content, what's required, so my knowledge management systems are accurate and thereby my customer interactions are accurate? Doing all of this really adds the element of making a conversational AI system very relevant to your enterprise and thereby providing better results. So with all this means that, think about a multimodal AI platform. So what is multimodal? Today, companies or consumers switch between modes, switch between voice and chats, voice and digital. It's important to have the right form of have a platform which can drive the responses across both voice and chat as well as the digital channels. And that's where a multimodal platform comes into play. As with anything, I talked about the first one being integrations within your existing infrastructure. At Unifour, we offer a platform called the Unifour X platform, which can truly integrate with the different channels, with the different contact center infrastructures, with the different collaboration applications, with the different dialer applications, and the radio signals. So with this integration, you're able to apply the models across natural language processing, voice AI, emotion AI, and definitely the whole aspects around tenant and as well as knowledge AI to get the insights what you'd require to drive the applications across You Self-Serve, You Assist, and You Analyze. You Self-Serve is your traditional chatbot. You Assist is the application which does the agent assist component, and You Analyze provides the analytics required. Q for Sales, which is conversational intelligence, is purely focused beyond the contact center, really looking to drive the aspects around better enterprise B2B sales. So in essence, when you have the right conversational AI platform, you can drive three things with your customers. You can drive better real-time guidance, you can drive better automation of manual processes, and lastly, you can drive better aspects around actionable insights. And that's the primary focus of conversational AI with choosing a multimodal platform. Adam?
Yeah, thank you, Vijay. So I think I'm now going to talk about and cover off a case study. So before I set the scene, so this customer is a large retailer based in Australia, and they had two challenges, and I'll just frame up the two challenges. So the first one was, having observed behaviors in the contact center, the team were either doing two things. They were spending a significant amount of time in after-call work state, so which was affecting productivity. Why were they doing that? They were typing out the reason for call, the summary notes and disposition as it related to those interactions they were having with their customers. The second thing is that was discovered, there was a lack of uniformity in those disposition codes, so inaccuracy. The way that Adam takes notes is very different to the way that Vijay takes notes. Are either of us right? Maybe not. Maybe either, Adam with a summary of call done, customer happy, and Vijay, who writes down war and peace, may not actually be both correct. And then the second one was really understanding, and relating to the first challenge, it's also around how do you improve agent experience? So it's not the most fun task, actually typing out those notes. Some agents were typing at them at the end of the call. Some were updating Notepad during an interaction, and then at the end of the call, they would copy and paste out of the Notepad, stick it into the CRM. So how do you improve their experience? And then the second challenge is, how do you really understand what are the root causes that are coming into the contact center? So, I've said it many times in my career, the reason people don't wake up in the morning and say, hey, I really want to wake up and ring a call center, it's normally because it's a broken journey. So how do you identify those broken journeys? And then how do you hold others in the organization accountable? And the only way to hold them accountable is to give very, very clear and crisp feedback around what's actually broken, whether it be a website, whether it be a mobile app, whether it's a poor store or retail experience. So how do you understand those? And then excessive time was being spent on trying to discover those. And then when you combine those 2 points together, it's really, there was a tendency that customers were going to social media and escalating these issues, which is obviously then an impact on brand for that organization. And overall, because those insights weren't clear and crisp, nothing was being treated as a serious concern from the contact center, and the organization was disregarding it. So how did we tackle these two challenges? So the first one was UAssist. So as Vijay mentioned before, this is the solution to act as the agent co-pilot and augment the agent experience. And in this instance, we deployed UAssist after call or after conversation. And what were the results that we achieved? We achieved an 11% reduction in overall average handle time. But probably the most significant is the next 2 points, which is a 40% reduction in after call work and 100% compliance. So therefore, 100% of disposition and summary notes were being written back to the platform, which is obviously critical from a reporting and analytics perspective. But probably the piece that I resonate the most on this slide is I got to buddy up with some of the agents down in Melbourne. They didn't know who I was. I just buddied up and sort of asked them what their experience was and what they thought of what was happening now. And the summary, I just remember this guy just telling me, hey, it just makes my life easier, and I think that was probably something that will stick with me for the rest of my life, that, it just made his life easier, that it was actually just capturing the after call summary and notes automatically. And then the second component that we deployed was UAnalyze. So this is the ability to analyze interactions post the call or post conversation. And really what was the focus and the results from UAnalyze? It was a reduction in the QA team. So the QA team got smaller, but the same QA team spent most of their time then doing what they could spend in a more valuable way, which is spending time with the frontline team on coaching opportunities as that came out from a reporting perspective. Team leaders spent less time actually listening to interactions and listening to calls, and more time actually acting on them. And then there was a series of discovered interactions about failure points. One of them that I remember coming through was there was a failure after a website update. And within sort of 24 hours, the team were able to identify what had actually happened, what was going wrong, and then fed it back to the web team, the digital team, to have it resolved. And obviously happy to ask if anyone has any questions on the case study when we get to the end, happy to cover them. And then in terms of how do customers take Unifour and deploy it in a quick manner. So we have a time to value pack. So we have preloaded language packs, which means that we understand the common ways in which customers across all major verticals and use cases ask a question and how we identify them. And what does that really mean? It means that for a financial services, a telco, a healthcare provider, retail, we can deploy in 8 to 12 weeks a solution. So the same results that we achieved for that retailer, we could achieve for your business. And at that point, I think, Fran, we're ready for any Q&A.
Cool. Thanks, Adam. Thanks, Vijay. There's some really interesting stats in there, particularly with your case study. So I wouldn't mind sort of delving into that a little bit, and I encourage anyone who's got any questions to start putting them up there. But you talked about, particularly with You Assist as your first set of program, and you had some pretty extraordinary stats that were actually, I think, 11% and 38% as far as reductions in. Yeah, there we go. Slide on the screen. So again, right, we're in a financial crunch. We've just had the first Australian financial year post-COVID. COVID saw a lot of things happen. It saw, a shift to everybody pivoted. We moved, we went from home. We've suddenly had these conversations about productivity. Many organisations needed to really change posture of the services and support they were offering to customers. Fast forward, right? So we're 3 years down the track from when that started. We've got a whole lot of organisations that are challenged by a couple of things. Number one, attrition is a really big number in contact centre land, as we all know, and we're challenged by. But actually that means that a lot of organisations don't have the same people working now as they did pre-COVID. Okay, so they'll have a small core, but a lot of their frontline agents and a lot of their leaders, actually managers and team leaders, have actually shifted off either internally or to other things. So when you think about an organisation's posture change, pre-COVID, they kind of had a rhythm, they knew what they were doing. We're suddenly down this path that now none of those same people almost exist. So suddenly they're having this whole change management kind of, approach that needs to say, now we need to take back that firmer posture, whether it's about going a bit harder on debt, whether it's about changing views on, hardship and things like that, or whether it's about pushing different levers in a sales environment. The reductions you're talking about are really significant in actually supporting a learning cycle as well. So if we think about AHT, when you've got speed to competency, that's, kind of not getting up there at a fast pace, or not where an organisation wants to see, and there's a whole lot of reasons for that. But if suddenly you've got some other levers within the environment that actually you can utilise to tap into that budget pressure, to actually look at the differences here. So as far as AHT, if we look at that separately, this is about utilising the You Assist program to provide supported scripting, almost, guided responses. The after call work, I think, is another huge one, because I know we've got some organisations that are seeing an incredible jump in the amount of time. So your case study, so again, a percentage is just a number, right? But as far as impact to the organisation in the case study you're talking about, when they started, what did they see as this? Did they think it was going to give them those sort of outcomes? What did they see as their biggest target? Were they fully focused? Because I think there's a whole lot of focus on AHT when, sometimes there's some other things that actually give them greater benefits. Were they one-dimensional in that, or did you really help shape what they were looking for and what that potential was within the whole sort of, pilot phase or whatever it is you did when you first started the implementation? How was it that they were involved in helping to design sort of targets and how they would take this approach on?
Yeah, cool. I can talk about, I know Vijay can talk about the focus initially, Fran, was around after call work order reduction. And that was driven and accuracy of that data, coupled with a belief and understanding that it does have an impact, although we haven't measured it yet, around employee experience. So, and this is almost doubled what we had hoped to achieve from an after call work percentage number. And then the AHT savings was like a peripheral benefit that we got through the process. But in terms of how did this may or may not be the right thing for the people on the call. This may not be the right use case for you, although after call work automation is quite, transferable from industry to industry and seems to be a common problem. But, in terms of after call work and how do you use, You Assist to assist an agent on a call, in a sales environment, it might be to guide the agent on what's the right, objection handling. So a customer is starting, on a sales interaction, you can use what you discover in analytics to say that, VJ is the best sales guy. And the way that he is the best sales guy is his objection handling for the current circumstances goes down this path. So let's build that into the script to bring everyone to be a whole series of VJs rather than VJ just being a top performer and having others trail behind him. So I think to answer your question, Fran, it's about, how did we determine this? We spent time observing the flow and the behavior and then coming up with a hypothesis of this is the first use case to start with, and then we will grow. And that's what we do with all of our customers. So
yeah, and Adam,
No,
Fran, just to add a couple of things to Adam. With the U-Assist, we do two distinct things, right? So one is the after call work summarization automation, which really is focused on improving the efficiencies and improving the accuracies and improving the time spent in terms of handling after call work, which obviously brings down the AHT. The U-Assist has another real-time in-call assistance, which is really, as Adam said, providing step-by-step guidance, the next best action, integration into the knowledge management systems to make the agents more, deliver a much better customer experience. And it also really incorporates the emotion AI capabilities, which is understanding who the customer is, understanding their sentiment and tone of the emotion of the call, so thereby providing the right appropriate guidance during the call. I think you brought up a point about the agent attrition and being high, and if newer agents get acquired, get onboarded, what's the onboarding time? What we have seen with our customers who have deployed U-Assist, the in-call component, is they've seen that reduce the onboarding times by as much as 50%. Because now agents have the real-time guidance. They don't have to go through that many classes to be that much more proficient in handling certain calls.
Yeah, I think that's a huge win. And I know speaking to some members last week, they were talking about the challenge when onboarding. And, we all say it, but we're technical or we're a bit different or we're a bit something. The time for their speech competency or the cycle they relied on was greater than 6 months. But actually their tenure, was dropping off at high rates at, kind of month 4. So they were actually never getting the value from the cost sunk in as far as resources go. So I would imagine, picking up on that last point, the confidence that some of that assisted guidance actually provides gets people to actually feel those safety rails are there, but actually that confidence is what then generally helps. And Adam, picking up on your point around engagement, if we can get the tools right, the engagement and the support, sort of balancing, it's a much better environment for that staff experience. And I think you touched on briefly, sitting next to somebody who just said it's easier. And actually, I think that's what it comes down to, right? It's so much easier. If I don't have to be cutting and pasting from some note that I've taken on an interaction, it's definitely going to be better for me. The other interesting thing that you talked about here was the compliance. And I know there's a lot of CRMs that rely on agents to complete some steps in after call work that actually then feed into how they report and how they measure and how they track and things like, codes for what the call was about and stuff like that. So some of this, if we're saying there's 100% after call compliance, you're actually removing some of that user, not that it's intentional, but it's just user error that actually can drive or skew data and reporting. So there's some really interesting things there. We've got a question here just from the audience in relation to how you differentiate your solution from those included in the main CCAS platform.
Yeah, I can take that. I saw that question. I wanted to answer it live. So that's a great question, by the way, and we get this question quite a few times. Think about the CCAS providers as more of a system of engagement. Their primary job and the primary USP and their focus is on really connecting customers with the call center agents. So whether it's through chat channels, digital channels, voice channels, that's what it is. CCAS providers are starting to deploy some amount of AI in their solutions, but their core competency and where they really want to focus is going to be in the routing and the system of engagement, really focusing on tying the callers and the customers with the agents. Where, how we are differentiated is this is all we do. We are invested into the AI, and this is all we do. And we are really, really trying to provide the system of intelligence to all the CCAS providers. So we want to be on top of the CCAS providers, provide the system of intelligence, understand truly the emotion of each and every call, understand how we can get our voice AI technologies better, and also incorporate generative AI into our technologies to deliver a much better customer experience. Adam, if you want to add anything.
No, I think from the case study that we used as a baseline for the work we did with the retailer was Verizon in the US. So that's our largest deployment to date. It's the largest deployment of this type of technology globally. And there's a lot of learnings that go in to get that type of scale. It's live for almost 30,000 agents. So when you think of, the learnings that have come from that ramped up approach, to Vijay's point, we are the steak knife, as opposed to a Swiss Army knife. We're the steak knife for this type of technology in the contact center. So hopefully there's no vegetarians on the call.
Yeah, okay there. QA, interesting piece around QA. I was only having some conversations with people a couple of weeks ago around their overinvestment still in QA. So big organization, lots of people physically sitting and listening to phone calls, pulling out some outliers, using that to then extrapolate data. So it's all kind of skewed. It's skew on skew on skew, really. But the investment, so they've got, a team of 45 people sitting, listening to phone calls, not sitting doing the coaching or not actually building the skill from it. And, heaven forbid, not taking calls to actually take some of that pressure off. So the proposition here around, you analyze that gives some of that automated solution. How widely is it being applied? Is it going across every interaction, just popping out outliers then to be deep dived into? What's the process for the QA? Because to me, this actually revolutionizes how organizations are still kind of stuck. They're stuck in this rhythm of we've always done it. We've got corporate obligations that mean we have to report in a particular way. And there's a real opportunity to shift away from that, because I would speak to many, you guys would be the same. I don't know that it's giving us great outcomes anyway, what we're doing. It's really this tick and flick. So what have you seen from the analyze piece, what it's done for this organization? Obviously it's made some changes here, but on a broader scale, how much opportunity is there in this space?
Yeah, I can cover off from this organization, and maybe I can pass to Vijay from a wider context. But yeah, I think, Fran, it surprises me as well that this technology, not just with Unifour, but just generally in the market, has been available for quite some time. Yet organizations still spend time to buddy up, listen to what is ultimately going to be a very small sample size. And then you're acting on that very small sample size to steer your whole organization, rather than capturing 100% of interactions. To answer your question, we capture 100%, whether it's via messaging or via voice. And then, you use your most valuable, assets, which is your people, to then actually spend time and pick up and act on, those results. Does it mean that you need to reduce your team? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe you keep the same size of team. Maybe you keep that organization keeps its 45 people, but it uses the 45 people in a far more effective way.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I think most companies, what happens in quality management is it's always trying to piecemeal and trying to sample calls and not really using technology to listen to 100% of the calls. I think where we want to think about using technology is if I can really look at all the calls, understand truly where agents need to improve. It is not about reducing agents. It's just about trying to coach your agents be better agents in the future.
Yeah, definitely agree with that. And I think, the old school approach to quality and quality assurance as such. There's a whole other part of the industry that's invested in almost defending quality outcomes, which, you know, again, is human nature to a degree. But imagine if we could use those resources to actually build capability, strengthen call handling, call interaction management. We'd be in a really different situation. Change management for this, you know, you talked about, you know, kind of it's much easier, but most organisations have a real need to make sure some of those things are ticked off and thought through prior to kind of jumping into something which, you know, again, is new and different. How much focus and do you work with organisations to kind of work through what that change management process looks like, Adam? Is that kind of part of the Unifour approach? What can we do through the testing, and then how do we do it together, and how's that change management impact?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, you know, the 30,000 agents that we're running for Verizon didn't go live on 30,000 on day one. You know, like, I think, you know, you don't eat an elephant in a single sitting. So our methodology is definitely to deploy to a smaller pool of agents originally, you know, initially, take the learnings, get the feedback, and then roll out wider. I think probably my learning for this organization is, you know, how do you go about maybe getting a focus group of lead agents, and then for them to be advocates to the rest of the pool. I actually strongly believe that these type of technologies, like specifically with UAssist, in 5 or 10 years time, I don't actually think we'll be talking about, like, I just think it'll be the default.
Yeah,
like, I think when someone starts a job with, you know, customer, you know, moves from one business to another, they'll just expect it. And it'll almost be like, you know, going to organization and they don't have a coffee machine, you know, because everyone will expect that every organization has a coffee machine. So.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think, you know, the first step and probably the challenge that we're hearing from members is, where do we start? So, you know, I think the initial piece here, VJ, that you took everybody through around what are those different components, and actually how do they come together to create opportunity for organisations, is actually key to that first step. And I know that probably what I loved in that first slide was the cartoon, Adam, that called out the number of experts. The fastest growing expertise is those that now know everything about AI. And it's amazing how we actually are seeing that right across the industry. We are seeing experts popping up. And again, you know, the challenge for members and the challenge for organizations is, how do you kind of pick through that, and how do you understand, you know, what's the end game? How do you get there? And what are the right applications along the way to actually, you know, kind of build appetite for with executives, because it's you know, multi-level as far as needing to get that advocacy and support before you jump in there. I'll throw out there, we haven't got any more questions, but I know, you know, there's an opportunity for, we'll be obviously sending out the recording, and I'm not sure if we're sending out the slides, but we'll work on that one. But there's a way, you know, we can have anyone interested reach out to you guys and get some more information. But I think that, you know, really, if we think about the 4 different components that you went through, VJ, and what people need to think about in each of those elements, it really is about taking that back to your organization and thinking about your environment. You know, again, we're hearing all the opportunity in, you know, outcome wise, but actually, how do you start building that use case for your executive? How do you build it that it's got the right, you know, connection to the problem that you're trying to actually navigate, or the challenge you're trying to overcome? But equally, how do they think about AI and its applications across those multi-spheres, as opposed to, you know, just this one big thing, or just, you know, this thing called ChatGPT? You know, if they want support or they've got any questions, they can reach out to you guys.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, Fran, you summarized it very, very well. Like, it's, you know, where do you start? You start with a first step. How do you find and discover the stepping stones? It's really about understanding the priorities for your organization and your pain points. And we can, we talk about this discovery process. We've done it for 6 or 7 different organizations, and the answer for the 6 and 7 is always very different. So,
yeah. I think ChatGPT, I think I made a point earlier, ChatGPT will not be relevant for the enterprise context.
Yeah, absolutely agree. Absolutely.
So I think the key point is, where do you start? It always starts with understanding who your customer is. So that means that you need to have the right technologies which can help you understand who the customer is, their intent and sentiment when they engage with you. And then you can provide the assistance and the automation after the next step. But it starts with understanding the customer, then assisting the customer across chatbots and agent assist, and then automating any after call work and any other manual processes, and then optimizing into the future. So once you get the insights, you can optimize.
Yeah, thanks, Vijay. Thanks, Adam. I think you're both right. I think all of those things are key elements. And at the end of the day, if you build the right environment, your people, so your employee engagement and your people can flourish. Great people supported by great tech actually deliver the results for your customers that you're after. And, maybe, hopefully, go a long way to actually help address some of those other environmental challenges that we're continuing to see, which is, short tenured, fast moving people, which means we need to rethink how we prepare, onboard and support people at those, first stage right through to end stage, as far as engagement within the organization. So some fantastic points you guys have raised today. Thank you both. Thanks for the case study. As I said earlier, we will distribute the recording of the session, and we'll make sure that there's some contacts in relation to Adam and Vijay. So if you wanted to reach out and get any more information, I think the real message here is, again, go back to the basics, know your customer, and then think about where are those first steps and where are those pain points or friction points along that journey that actually some of these emerging tools, and I think, Adam, you said it, some of this stuff's been there for years and we still haven't jumped on it. Question is why? And sometimes I think that burning platform actually pushes us to take a step and start small. But thank you both for sharing today. I think there's been some really useful information in there, and it's always great to see a case study that demonstrates actually it's still the fundamentals. We've still got some great wins with AHT. We've got some great wins with after call work. We sorted out some of that compliance component. And then there's some other pluses that actually can bring real value to you as an organization. Thank you, everybody, for attending. And we look forward to our next session with you all. Thanks, Adam. Thanks, Vijay.
Thank you.